Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man coming to the stage right now is one of the main reasons the global entrepreneurship has become a phenomenon. Please welcome the founder of Bars and Entrepreneur Week, Gary Whitehill.
Man. Hola, Mexico! Hey! How's everybody doing? Good? Yeah? High five if you've had a great time. All right, that's the entire crowd. I like that. All right, so what we're going to go through today is a 6-step journey called the Entrepreneur's Lifecycle. If everything goes well, you're going to question everything you've ever been taught about being an entrepreneur. You're going to do everything that you want to do instead of living for other people. And last but not least, you're going to slow down and you're going to start thinking more strategically about how to build a company. So before we get started, we want to do a little bit of an exercise. This is me when I was 5 years old at Disney World. It's one of the best memories I have as a kid. What I'd like you to do is talk to the person next to you on either side for 1 minute. And then we're going to switch, and I want you to tell them what your best childhood memory was. Because this presentation is all about having fun. And last time I checked, when we were all 5 years old, we were having a lot of fun. So go ahead. All right, switch. Do we have a microphone to give to the crowd? All right, who's got a funny story to share? Raise your hand. Somebody does. There we go. Give her the microphone. Tell us your name, where you're from, and your funny story.
My name is Mariana.
Okay.
And my funny story is that I met someone who was really intense with me. And actually, it was married. and his girlfriend just called me. And I was like, what is going on? I thought that it was a friend. I never saw him as nothing else. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I just made a mistake. I thought you were a lesbian. And it was like, no, I am not. And
okay.
And it was really, really weird. But I just laughed at that really much.
All right, anybody else? One more. Anybody else? Come on, somebody wants to share. Don't be shy. Way in the back. Way in the back.
Last year I was in Mexico City. I was taking a shower and there was an earthquake. I was in Mexico City and there was an earthquake and I was in the shower, so I had to go outside the community in the towel.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. All right. So, I've always been curious how many companies have ever scaled to 4 continents in the history of the world since 1850. In the past 164 years, how many companies have scaled globally? So my team and I did the homework. And it turns out that 100,000th of a percent of companies ever built have scaled globally. It's actually less than 1,000 have scaled to 4 continents. I'm fortunate to be in front of you today having done that. I've seen the good, the bad, and the crazy all around the world. And so the life cycle that we're going to go through today, the 6 steps that we're going to go through, is a culmination of everything I've seen from Brazil, Chile, Greece, Guatemala, London, Malaysia, Canada, you name it, almost any country I've been there, except for Africa to this point. So what we're going to do here today is talk a lot about this, the Entrepreneur's Lifecycle. The first step in the Entrepreneur's Lifecycle is you're a dreamer. I need a savior. There's a lot of people in the audience right now who it's your first time being an entrepreneur. This is the first step that you're going to go through. It's usually the hardest step to go through because you're really trying to search out what to do. The second stage is the tester. You seek to belong. You seek to become a part of the entrepreneurial community. You want to feel like you're a part of something instead of just this separate outlier that your parents, your family, your friends don't understand. The third stage is being a loyalist. You go through this stage where you think instead of doing everything that your family and your friends told you to do, you need to do what the establishment tells you to do. You need to do what angel investors tell you to do. You need to do what Silicon Valley tells you to do. You need to do what the venture capitalists tell you to do. And it doesn't end well, and we're going to get through that stage. Those first 3 stages usually take about 5 years to go through. And so my goal today is to show you how to get through those stages much quicker, much more efficient, and in a way that you don't go crazy. The 4th stage is where you start your resurrection, when you become a realist. You start looking inside. You start building a company for the right reasons. The 5th stage is when you realize that entrepreneurship is a journey. It's a journey of service. You don't build a company for the money. You don't build a company for the fame. You build a company because people need a product or a service that you're passionate about building. Problem is, when you're in stage 1, that's normally not how you think about it. The final stage that we're going to go through is the compassionate stage. As foo-foo as it sounds, what entrepreneurship really truly is about love. Because if you're not in love with building a company and doing it for the right reasons, if you don't love yourself, it doesn't matter. Because you are the fundamental foundation of your business. It doesn't matter what your operational strategy is. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter who your friends are. It doesn't matter what family you come from. What matters is truly whether you're deeply passionate about what you're doing and you love yourself, because everything goes bottom up. You've probably seen this slide in one respect or another before. The challenge is that most of us never step back and actually think about our dreams and our goals and what resources we have. The rest of this presentation is about the resources and how to efficiently use resources and how to get to where you want your future to be. What I'd like you to do right now is pull out a pen and a paper or a cell phone or your iPad or your computer, and we're going to take 5 minutes, and I want you to write down the top 5 things you want to accomplish in the next 50 years. You're not going to share it, but it's extremely important that you write it down, because the rest of this presentation is structured around what you write down and how you're going to achieve it. It's an opportunity for you really to achieve what you want to do through the course of the rest of your life. Take 5 minutes. And remember, these should be stretch goals. These should be something that aren't easy to attain. Getting married is not something in 50 years that really matters compared to going to the moon. So think about things that are the scale of going to the moon, because we're really going to stretch your brains. Two more minutes. All right, everybody ready? Ready to rock and roll? All right, we got a lot to cover. So, sitting there, now writing on a piece of paper, you're probably thinking, okay, how is this guy going to help me get to those 50-year dreams? And now, how is he going to help me get the company that I'm here to launch in the first place to market? And how is he going to help me to raise money, right? There's some statistics that I'm going to share with you right now that you've never seen before. And they're pretty damper statistics. But I'm going to show you them for a very specific reason. 432 million entrepreneurs attempt to start 305 million businesses a year. Anybody have any guess how many of those actually launch? Just yell out a number. 10%? 10%. 5%. About 30% actually launch, okay? But out of that 100 million, only 1 in 1,000 actually ever get to sustainable revenue and cash flow. So the reason why I said don't listen to your parents, your friends, don't worry about the agenda of investors, don't worry about what academics tell you, is because they haven't studied the entrepreneur's life cycle long enough. And they haven't studied it from multiple lenses. They haven't looked at it from your point of view, the entrepreneur's point of view. And they haven't done it across the world, across many industries, and from many different perspectives. The reason this resides is because there's a crucial difference in understanding what it means to build a business that an investor cares about and why you're in the audience today. And we're going to talk through the reasons why that happens. But the main point is that everybody around you talks about being an expert, right? How many of you have heard somebody say, I'm an expert, I'll help you with your business? Raise your hand. Yeah, the majority of you, right? This statistic shows that there are no experts. There are no experts. I'm not an expert, you're not an expert, no investor is an expert, and no CEO is an expert. It's a fact. What you have is a bunch of people who at the right time, at the right place, had something happen. And it worked at that particular time. It's what's called luck most of the time. So understand that 1 in 1,000 is not how you get to a long-term sustainable company in a way that probably is relevant to the business that you want to build. But it's actually a very good statistic for the investors, because the investors don't mind this statistic, because the cream rises to the top no matter what. And they have no incentive to actually change the structure of how they fund your companies, because they're making money hand over fist, as we know. How many of you in the course of your career in building a company have realized that the way you want to build your company is different than the way an investor told you to build it? Raise your hand. How many of you have talked to an investor before? Raise your hand. Okay. I'm glad we're going through this then, because we got a lot of folks who are going to be investors in front of investors soon enough. The big takeaway is the fact that how you build, scale, and fund a business is fundamentally broken. For all of you in the audience, it's fundamentally broken for you as the entrepreneur, and it's fundamentally broken for the global economy. It's not broken for the investor, but it's broken for you. So here we go. The dreamer, I need a savior. There are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we are afraid, we pull back from life. When we are in love, we are open to all that life has to offer, with passion, excitement, and acceptance. John Lennon said that. The funny part about that is that entrepreneurship really is about passion, excitement, and acceptance. Entrepreneurship is the physical manifestation of how entrepreneurs express true love. And so when you look at this statement, it's important to understand that being fearful of being an entrepreneur is not helpful. But being in love with yourself and what you're doing is actually really important. Fundamentally, there's a core thing that we all have inside of us, this drive to do something. It's called purpose. It's why you do what you do. That is what this talks about, is a motivating force. And so it's important as you build your business to understand what that is for you, and we're going to go through that today. Unfortunately, when you start out as an entrepreneur, most of the time you don't know what that is. So what happens is you look for somebody who can teach it to you. You look for a group, you look for a person, and what happens is that makes you very susceptible to one-trick ponies, outliers, false prophets, and people who are really lucky. When you go through life, most of us don't think that life is wide open. We think that it's very closed. We think that we have a very minuscule opportunity because that's the world that we come from. Except the world is flat, right? We have this thing called the internet. And the internet empowers you to do whatever you want, when you want to do it, why you want to do it, how you want to do it. Sometimes, right? It allows you to get all the information you want, but it doesn't allow you equal opportunity access to take that information and then do what you want with it and take the world by storm. So let's talk about some of the opportunities that you have sitting here today when you're in this mode. Enable the hardest sport in the world to work for you. Entrepreneurship is the hardest sport in the world. Every other sport, soccer, football, track, you name it, plays on how you are hardwired from a hunter-gatherer society. It plays on the fact of competition. It plays on the fact of competitiveness. The thing is, it's a team sport. Entrepreneurship is just about the end of the road in terms of being opposite. Entrepreneurship is so risky that 90% of people won't even lift a finger on a keyboard to try and be an entrepreneur. And you need to understand that, because the people you talk to, the business you try to build, and the passion that you have is a sport unlike any other in the world. It doesn't play by the same dynamics. Trust your gut. What happens when you become an entrepreneur a lot of times is you're passionate about something for a very specific reason. You either see an opportunity or you have a visceral need yourself. When you go to be an entrepreneur, your gut says a certain amount of things to do it a certain way, because that's how you're brought up. What happens is, in this early stage, you end up veering off the path of what you think you should be doing. Your gut always knows the right thing to do at the right time for the right reasons. And you need to understand that. Your gut, it's your tent pole. Your tent pole is your why. It's your passion, it's your purpose, it's your cause, and it's your belief. Do not ever dismiss your gut, because what happens when you first start an entrepreneurship is that you listen to everybody else instead of your gut. And your gut will never drive you in the wrong way. Number 3, understand the establishment needs you and not the other way. So a perfect example is press. Right? So a lot of us think that getting PR is actually really, really hard. In reality, it's not that hard at all. There's a specific format for how you get press. It's very simple. There are certain journalists that cover certain topics. They cover those certain topics for certain reasons. What they're looking for is an interesting story that appeals to their readers in 2 or 3 bullet points that those readers could take away, right? That's basically the hook. If you put your company and the product and service that you're looking to sell in that format and send it to a journalist, more than likely they're going to reply, and more than likely they're going to say it's for them because of these reasons, or it's not. The way the world works right now, the way in which only 1 in 1,000 of you actually build a sustainable business, is that investors play on the fact that you're afraid. They play on the fact that you don't know. They prey on the fact that you don't know what it's like when you show up in Silicon Valley. They want you to think that they know better than you, but they don't. They need you more than you need them. Because there's only 2 things in this world when it comes to entrepreneurship that aren't commodities. Number 1, it's the entrepreneur. And number 2 is the entrepreneur's idea. Money, mentorship, space, you name it, it's all commodities. So remember, they need you more than you need them. So the point being is nobody can save you or your vision. It's your job to understand who you are, what you're passionate about, and uncover the principles for why you believe the world works the way that it does. Sitting in this room today, you are a misfit. It's just a fact. Great leaders understand that being a misfit is an opportunity. Great leaders understand that being a misfit is a responsibility. They understand that it's their responsibility to bend the world to their vision. They don't sit there and say, oh, poor me. They get out there and they do it every single day. And they hold themselves accountable mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And on this journey, if you want to get past stage 1, you need to do that too. Stage 2, I seek to belong. What separates privilege from power is gratitude. The world's a very fast place. The world's full of a lot of different people and a lot of different things. We want to have the nice car. We want to have the nice house. We want to be accepted personally. We want to feel as though we're understood. We want to make money so that we can have experiences. But the fact of the matter is, in this stage, you still are looking to be around other people that don't have your best interest in mind. Because you don't know any better. You still read the articles, you still go to the events, and you still listen to what the investors have to say to you, where they talk about addressable market size, exit time, marketing funnel strategy, all these things that have nothing to do with why you do what you do. Why you do what you do is you want to have a sense of autonomy, you want to do something that changes the world, and you want to master a craft. Those are the 3 fundamental reasons entrepreneurs build companies. And they're very different than what this fast world tells you you should be doing. So in this second stage, the number 1 thing that I see happen time and time again, it goes back to the poor me syndrome. As an entrepreneur, you're not thankful. Be thankful, because the majority of the world, almost 8 billion of them, are in a 9 to 5 every day, slogging it out. Thankfully, you don't have to worry about that. And that's an advantage as an entrepreneur. Step 2, create small wins. Entrepreneurship is a set of tens of thousands of little decisions. So you can talk about marketing strategy, you can talk about sales strategy, you can talk about operational strategy. You can raise $100 million. But guess what? None of it matters if you don't create small wins for yourself. Most of the time we're thinking 6 months in the future, a year in the future. How about you think about right now, in this room? Because what you wrote down on those pieces of paper, it all starts now. Because you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. There's only 2 options you have. And in those 2 options, The only way you're going to get there, step by step, step by step. And eventually, step by step, gets to little step. And then, start going fast. All you see in the news right now, whether you read TechCrunch, Inc. magazine, whatever the heck you read, all you're reading about is entrepreneurs and companies that go like this. Nobody starts out like this. And if they do, they're 1 out of a billion. Most people start like this. They go a little bit to the side, they do a little do-si-do, they may go backwards, and then they go a little bit forwards, and then it picks up. And the reason I give you that example is because you need to understand that you will never have the right answer. Understand the fact that right now in the current way that you are forced to build your company, in the current paradigm, you have an infinite amount of challenges and a finite amount of resources. How many of you understand and have been frustrated with the fact that although you know what you want to do, and although you know where you want to go, you're not able to get there because you don't have enough resources? That's my case in point. So when you're in this stage and you're still looking to be part of a group that doesn't have your best interest in mind, it's important to stay logical. Because entrepreneurship is a very emotional sport. It's very easy to move fast and break things and all those fun sayings. But at the end of the day, it's about implementing process. We all talk about change, right? I had a girlfriend once. Every month she had a new change, right? The funny thing is change is easy. It's easy for me to say I'm going to change. Tomorrow I'm going to wear a purple shirt instead of a salmon shirt, right? It's easy to make a change. It's hard to make a lasting decision. A lasting decision needs process. A lasting decision needs commitment. It takes 30 days for you to build a habit. Just saying you're going to make a change, reading a couple books, outlining a couple new thoughts is not going to make a difference. What you wrote down on that piece of paper is an opportunity to make a true change. You already know what your end point is. This presentation is about systematically backing up to a point where you are now, somewhere in this life cycle, and figuring out logically how you can put those steps into place and make the difference that you want in the world. Stage 3, the loyalist. I do it for the establishments. The funny thing about entrepreneurship, as we've talked about, is it's built in the best interest for the investor. The entrepreneur takes all the risk. Blood, sweat, money, tears. The investor, what do? They lose rich people's money. They have a very frugal downside compared to your downside. You're supposed to take all the risk. And so what happens? What happens is when you go to see an investor and you're passionate about what you do, you think you've figured out your operational plan, your sales strategy, all these things, this is what happens. You get kicked in the face. And you're going to get kicked in the face the first time, and you're going to get kicked in the face the 10th time. And the reason why is because investors are looking for something very specific. Very, very specific. Okay? From our point of view, we want to change the world as entrepreneurs. In a lot of ways, entrepreneurs are in the philanthropy business. Investors, they used to be in the services business. They used to be in the risk business. Now they're in the finance business. They're in the business of making rich people richer. And very few people understand the difference between being in the finance business and philanthropy. And that's the reason why only 1 in 1,000 companies right now is sustainable in the long term. Because most people listen to the investors, the one-trick ponies, the outliers. They don't put the logical steps in place. And they don't realize that this is inevitably going to come. It's only a matter of time until you get into the fight. So what we're going to talk about is once the fight comes, what happens? Realize that this happens to everybody. Every single person I've ever met who has raised money from an investor has gotten kicked in the face. And frankly, you should get kicked in the face. Because just because you think your idea is God's gift to the world, it isn't. And just because you think you know how to build a company, you don't. And just because you're passionate about it doesn't always mean you should do it either. In this test that you're going to go through, you're either going to continue forward or you're going to go back to corporate America. How many of you want to go back to corporate America? Exactly none of you. So when you get kicked in the face, it's okay. The point is you have to buckle up. And the reason you have to buckle up is because 432 million people, just like you in this audience, try to build a company every year. 432 million people. And that number is only increasing. So your odds of success, as that increases, goes down. But it doesn't have to. Entrepreneurship is not a 1-month journey. It's not a 6-month journey. It's not a 5-year journey. It's a 10-year journey. Most of the time, you don't even get in front of an investor for 2 years. From the time that you have an inkling of you want to do something to the time you first get in front of an investor, it takes 2 years. How many of you, raise your hand, have ever had a habit that you've kept for 2 years? Raise your hand. 10% of the audience. So understand the fact that entrepreneurship is a commitment for the long term. And at this stage, your own truth begins now. You start to realize, once again, in stage 3, that everything you've been told, everything you've been taught, everything you've read, all the videos you've watched, all the keynote speeches that you've heard here, in a lot of ways, aren't taking into account what your journey is. What your journey is an entrepreneur who cares about autonomy, an entrepreneur who wants to change the world, and an entrepreneur who wants to be a master at their craft. Very few people will ever give you a framework for how to do that. Here's a case study of how good ideas fail. I get a lot of questions most of the time. Gary, I've never raised money before. What does it look like? What does it look like when I show up in Silicon Valley? Well, let's talk about it. As we know, 1 out of 1,000 is the statistic right now. So here's Annalise. She has an idea. She wants to make a difference in the world. Raise your hand if you want to make a difference in the world. Every single person. So how funny is that? Nobody wants to go back to a 9-to-5 job. Less than 10% of the audience has had a habit that they've had more than a couple of years. But everybody wants to make a difference. It's kind of a dichotomy, isn't it? The problem with Annalise is she needs to make compromises. Why does she need to make compromises? Because she works a 9-to-5. She doesn't have a background in building a business plan, but she knows what she wants to do. She wants to be a champion. She wants to do something for the less fortunate, whatever that may be. She wants to build a great product and service. But she sits there and she struggles. She comes from an art background. She has no idea about a sales funnel, an operational strategy. Customer acquisition? What's that? How many people know what customer acquisition is? 10% of the audience, right? So you're going to be right where Annalise is as you go through this journey. And that's okay. Here's what you're going to face. Even though Annalise isn't comfortable, she goes in front of investors. And you know why she goes in front of investors? Because every single one of her friends, that's what they do. Everybody else is doing it, so why don't I do it? That's the #1 fatal flaw that every entrepreneur makes in their life. Just because people do it on TechCrunch, just because Inc. magazine says this, just because some venture capitalist says this, magically you're just supposed to do it. Remember when I said trust your gut? Remember when I said be principled and have a process? Because if you're principled, you have a process and you trust your gut, you don't get in front of an investors with an idea that you don't know how to pitch. Because here's what happens. That's what investors think her idea is, when that's what her idea actually is. How many of you struggle in articulating what your idea actually is? Raise your hand. See? Happens time and time again. And we're going to talk through exactly how to articulate that better. That's the #1 problem. So here's what happens. This is what investors think when they speak with Annalise. On the left side, she seems inexperienced. The guy in the middle, he's up Pooh's Creek without a paddle. The past 2 things that he invested in as a managing partner have flopped. So he's looking for a big win because he knows if he doesn't have a big win, he's out of a job. The third venture capitalist could care less about Annalise. Could be a whole host of reasons. The industry, the fact that she's a woman, the fact that she's 40 years old. There's a whole bunch of cognitive biases that investors have. And last but not least, one person is thinking about how does this fit into our portfolio? If any of you, before you went to an investor, thought about how you're going to answer these questions, raise your hand. 4 or 5 of you out of the entire room. This is what investors think about. Remember what I said before? Investors are in the finance business. You're not. Investors want you to do things their way. You don't. The funny thing is, how many of you, raise your hand, how many of you have heard an investor say, I only invest in things that are disruptive, that are game-changing, and I have a special way of doing it, whatever that hocus pocus is. How many people have heard that spiel before from an investor that they invest in disruption? Right? The funny thing about when investors say they invest in disruption is they then want you to have a business plan just like everybody else. They want you to have the same business plan, the same PowerPoint, the same statistics, in the same exact way. So once again, here's a dichotomy. An investor says, I want a highly differentiated business with a high-growth, scalable market, but I want you to present it in the exact same way as everybody else. Does that make sense to anybody? Because it doesn't make sense to me. Rarely do investors want what entrepreneurs want. Fact. Investors define success in terms of a return on their investment. Most entrepreneurs could care less about return on investment. That's usually number 3 or number 4. Entrepreneurs define success as changing the world. Remember, how many of you want to change the world? Put up your hand again. Every single person in this room is putting up their hand. That's a very big difference. Public education fails kids just like entrepreneurship fails you right now. Think about it. As a kid, you're put into a grade based on your age, and you're just shuffled through grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you go through this process. And you go through this militaristic, hierarchical process, not because it's in your best interest, because it's in the best interest of the machine. The same thing is true about entrepreneurship. You are put through a machine and you're spit out through the machine. And by the time you get to this end of this stage, you're sick of it. So remember, Steve Jobs said this. Your time is limited. Stop wasting it and living someone else's dream. Because that's the majority of what people do in life. They listen to everybody else. They live for everything that everybody else lives for, and they don't follow what their passion is. Let's get to step 4. The realist. So what happens is once you get in the fight and you realize this dichotomy between what you want, what an investor wants, you have a journey inward. Here's what Tim Draper said. The entire industry of entrepreneurship needs to be rethought. Tim Draper is a 3rd-generation venture capitalist. You start to see the light. You start to understand the fact that building a company is not about money. It's not about what everybody else is doing. It has to do with why you do what you do. What's your passion? What's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? And we're going to talk through those steps. The first thing you need to do at this stage is you need to let go of the self-centered reasons that you built a company. How many of you have ever built a company because you wanted to impress somebody, or you thought that your parents thought it was a good idea? A couple of you. How many of you built a company because that's what you're passionate about? Raise your hand. Once again, right? But see, the funny thing is, where I come from in America, most people don't build companies for what they're passionate about. They build companies for this thing called market opportunity. They built these companies because that's what it says to do when they go to an Ivy League school, some addressable market. The funny thing about this is to accept how purpose has to be central to everything you do. Right? The problem is in articulating why you do what you do and what you're passionate about. An interesting statistic, in the past 9 years, there have been 1,050 photo app companies that have been funded by venture capitalists. 1,050. 7 exits in 9 years, yet $1 billion has been deployed to photo apps. $1 billion to photo apps. Why did Tim Draper say what he said? That the industry needs to be rethought? It's because of things like that. It's because when you look at the statistics, when you look at consumer penetration of mobile, we actually look at the world on the web through pictures. We really do. But in the reality of the world, it's not a scalable company. It's not a fundable company. It's just a photo app. Understand that as you look towards your personal journey inward, you're going to question yourself. You're going to question whether you're meant to do this or not. Remember, entrepreneurship is not a 6-month gig, it's not a year gig, it's not a 5-year gig. It's a 10-year gig. The pain is going to come. The nightmare in one way or another is going to come. All of you who are greenhorns who didn't raise your hand when I said, have you been in front of an investor? It's only a matter of time till something goes wrong. And you're not going to know when it's going to come. You're not going to know what it's going to look like. And you're not going to be able to justify it. Because entrepreneurship and a lot of the things that happen, because the process of how entrepreneurship is done is 60 years old. The process of how entrepreneurship forces you to build your company is 60 years old. That's when venture capital first started in the late 1940s, early 1950s in Silicon Valley. And the point of that is, when the pain comes, because the process is that old and that outdated and it's not in your best interest, you need to have grit. You need to trust your gut, you need to have the right process in place, and you have to understand why you do what you do. First rule in any technology. I love this one by Bill Gates. You put technology in something that's efficient, it makes it more efficient. You put technology in something that's inefficient, it gets even more inefficient. Understand, sitting in this room right now, you're naive, you're most likely arrogant, and you have absolutely no idea how to build a company. It's a fact. And that's okay. That's how the majority of people are. The lie is you think people know how to build companies. You think people who raise $100 million know what they're doing. You think the investors know what they're doing and that the advice they give you is the right thing. At the end of the day, entrepreneurship, because it's a 60-year-old process, is an inefficient operation that causes you to fail. So let's talk about how we can mitigate that failure. We've already talked about your top 5 hopes and dreams, right? Everybody wrote it down on a piece of paper. The second thing you do when you get home, you print and you post those 5 goals. You post them in 3 places. Next to your bed, where you brush your teeth, and the door you go out of the most. How many people have heard of the theory of change? Raise your hand. For those of you that don't know, the theory of change says this. If you have a goal and it's out here, and you continue to remind yourself about that goal, instead of taking the linear little lockstep trajectory that everybody takes to getting to that goal, what happens is you muddle along, have a couple kind of screw-ups here and there, and then you get right to it. The theory of change says that if you have a constant reminder of what you're trying to do, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years down the road, you have an exponential better chance to achieve it. Fact. Print and post. The third thing you do is surround yourself with the right people. This is the hardest thing for you to do as you go towards this journey. Because odds are some of your friends don't support you. Odds are most of your family has no idea what you do. And what you have to understand is you are the summation of the 12 people that you're surrounded by. So if you have a wife, a partner, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever, and they sort of get what you do, but they want you to spend more time with them, get rid of them. You have to get rid of them. Because last time I checked, everybody raised their hand and said they wanted to change the world. Well, the person who's most important to you, supposedly, your partner, doesn't support you. Right? I've had to make some hard decisions in life. Some of my best friends in college, guys who would take a bullet for me, I only see them once every 6 months. You know why? It's because they aren't doing what I'm doing. They're doing different things on their path and their journey. And it's not helpful to where my 50-year goals are. So I had to grow up as a man and make a strategic change. And this is why I like people with tattoos. Tattoos, most of the time, tell stories. Tattoos are about tribalism. There are people in this world who get tattoos because they have a story to tell. How many people have a tattoo because they have a story to tell? Raise your hand. A couple of you. The point is, the same thing goes for a tattoo as it does for the people that you surround yourself with. You either have the balls to get a tattoo that tells a story, just like you either have the balls and the confidence to put the right people around you for the right time, for the right reasons. Start with why. What we already talked about is what you want to do. The next step in your journey when you print out those pieces of paper and post them is think about how you're going to do it. Remember when we talked about the process? And then it's about why. Write down next to whatever those 5 goals are, why you do what you do. What is your passion? Is it helping people? What is it? What's your purpose? What makes you get out of bed every day? What's the cause that you believe the most in? What I believe more than anything in the world is that every single person deserves a realistic opportunity to manifest their dream. We all believe that equal opportunity access to information, right? We all believe that net neutrality deserves to happen, right? Does anybody not believe that net neutrality is a good thing? Of course not. And I believe that everybody deserves a realistic opportunity to take the information from the internet and then do something with it. Stage 5. There comes a time in life when you walk away from all the drama and the people who create it. Once again, going back to the people that you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with people who make you laugh, forget the bad, and focus on the good. Love the people who treat you right. The majority of people that you surround yourself with do not treat you right for the right reasons, because they don't understand what you're passionate about and they don't understand why. Most people talk about, from why they do what they do, they talk about their job. I'm an engineer. I'm a product strategist. Nobody cares about what you do. They care about why you do it. When people ask me what I do, I say I believe in empowering entrepreneurs to create their dream. And you either understand that or you don't. And you either ask a question or you kind of get a glazed eye. It's a very easy way to surround yourself with the right people. So that's what I think Jose was talking about. As you go through this part of the journey, you understand that it's time to grow up. You understand that it's not about you, and it's not even just about your business. You understand that it's about helping other people. You understand that entrepreneurship is something at the root, at the core, that people believe in why you do what you do. The product that you build, how you talk about it, has to be talked from a why perspective. Because that's the only way that people are going to feel emotional about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you're building, and where you're trying to go. First step in stage 5 is cease what you deserve. Everything leading up to this point that we've talked about is how do you get what you deserve in life? You either have the trust and the courage to do it or you don't. Which one are you going to choose? Make amends with an unfair process. Once again, we talked about it. 1,050 photo apps have gotten investment in 9 years. $1 billion deployed to pointless photo apps. Understand that the way entrepreneurship is done right now is not in your best interest. It's in the best interest of investors. They have a very frugal downside. They don't do the blood, sweat, the tears. They don't have to do much at all. They just sit back and lounge. Understand that fact. Understand that it's not fair. Have the strength and the courage to keep going, because it's not going to be fair for a while. And slow down. Slow down. What's funny is in this stage, in stage 5, when you finally think you understand how to build a company, you've listened to everything that we've talked about today, you have this adrenaline rush that you finally know how to do it. What you have to understand is working a 10-hour day, not sleeping for 72 hours. Those strategies don't work. Me personally, most of the time I don't work more than 4 hours a day. And I spend 2 hours a day hiking, and I spend 2 hours a day going to the gym. I spend another hour and a half reading the newspapers, all my feeds and all those things. And the reason why I do it is because in those 4 hours I get more done than you get done in probably the entire week. Because I'm so focused, I know what my process is, I know who I have to talk to, I know what has to be done, and all the people that surround me know why I do it. And they're happy to help at any time. And the only way you can make that happen for yourself is to slow down and think more strategically about what you do. When it comes to entrepreneurship, here's the process of how it should be, how you should go to market, how it should be structured. The first thing you always have is a question. Entrepreneurship is all about questions. The question is central to everything that you do. You need some piece of content at some point to answer that question. The second thing is you should be able to get market feedback before you even build your company. How many of you have struggled to build a company and get feedback? Case in point. Number 3, you would have a vetted idea. Once you get real market feedback, you would have a vetted idea. That vetted idea is important. And the reason it's important is because you actually have a defined value. Finally, you have a customer base that understands and believes in why you do what you do. Once again, it's not about your product, it's not about your company, it's why you do what you do. The product is just a physical manifestation of you. And that's why you have to be central to everything that you do when you become an entrepreneur. Once the value is defined, once you've built out all the right operational models, the next thing you want to do is get the right infrastructure. This is when you build in a CRM. This is when you start to operationalize your company. You do not lift a finger or a line of code until you've already gone through those steps. Once you do that, once you put the right operational infrastructure around you, once you have a predefined set of customers, once your customers are in your life cycle, now you can go out and raise money. The funny thing is, how it works right now is you basically skip number 1. Number 2, there's a couple things around. Number 3, the best thing you have in number 3 is Kickstarter, Etsy, Exit Round, Indiegogo. The reason why these platforms exist, the reason why they've taken off, the reason why they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars is because of everything you guys have raised your hands for today. Because right now, entrepreneurs are searching for new ways to bring their companies to market without taking all the risks that they have to take right now. Stage 6, leap in the net will appear. You have to understand something about entrepreneurship. As you finally understand what it's about, you have to understand that entrepreneurship is mostly about you. And it's mostly about what you think about yourself. All of us have skeletons in our closet. All of us have mental anguish. All of us have had family issues. All of us have had personal issues. The difference is whether you talk about it and you deal with it or you don't. Because mental anguish compounds itself. If you don't talk about it, it only compounds itself and manifests itself in ways that you could never imagine. Some of the best partnerships, treaties, and well thought out theories have all died because of this. Because very few people have thought through how to love themselves. We got to skip the musical chairs, unfortunately, because time's running short. But the point is about musical chairs, if you ran around as a bunch of separate people and you were all forced to get on one chair, this is it. Right now, this is how entrepreneurship forces you to do things. It's hierarchical, mechanistic, militaristic, and nationalistic. This is how the world operates, folks. Right there, in the white. Fact. That is the old paradigm. That is the old paradigm. That is the reason why 432 million entrepreneurs attempt to start 305 million companies and only 100 million of them launch, because they're forced into that structure. This is where the world is going. Synergistic, outsourced, crowdsourced, and biomimicked. The process of entrepreneurship will fundamentally change in the next 5 to 8 years. Until then, it's your job to hold on. And it's your job to understand the fact that this is the new paradigm of how the world is going to work. Because if you don't set yourself up for success in every way that we've talked about, and toward this way in which society is going to work, you're going to have some issues. Last but not least, we're going to talk about a few things, so we're running short on time, about how you can clip the noise in your way. Number one, be open-minded so that you can learn and grow. The number one problem in entrepreneurship is you're stuck in your ways. And how I started this presentation was that you follow the herd. Don't follow the herd. Be open-minded. Number two, always live in the solution rather than the problem. Frankly, I don't care what your problem is. Tell me how you've thought about what the solution is. Be in a growth mindset. Work with what you have right now. You can say you need money, you can talk about the future, but the fact of the matter is you're right here, right now for a certain amount of reasons. And you have to work with what you got. Remember, don't use the poor me syndrome, because nobody's going to feel bad for you. And that's not how entrepreneurs do things. Break the rules, but only once you know why they're there. Right now in entrepreneurship, it's really funny. We have this word disruption, because we do all these things that are disruptive. We blow out markets that have been around for hundreds of years, and we don't even know why they exist. How many people know that Silicon Valley was started by the United States government in the 1940s and 50s? Raise your hand. Case in point, very few people even know that. Understand why Silicon Valley exists. Understand how it started. Understand why it is where it is today. Stand up for what you believe in. You know better than anybody else what you believe in. It's just whether you have trust in what you believe or you don't. Be loyal and committed to the people you care about. Family comes first and foremost, no matter what. They might not agree with you, and you have to put them off to the side, but the fact of the matter is, family always comes first. Empower yourself so that you can empower others. You are the best person to take your vision from start to finish. Master the art of the bounce back. Always have a vision and hold on to it. Last but not least, how do you live your dream? Everything we've talked about today is just like everybody raised their hand. Everybody wants to change the world. Well, how do you do that? Understand that ego grows out of fear. You are fearful. You have mental anguish. You don't know the right answers. Understand that is okay. It's the people that have ego that force you to think otherwise. Only accept amazing people in your life. We've talked about why that matters. Be a mentor. Even if you're mentoring a 5-year-old kid, teach somebody something. You have something valuable to teach somebody else. Every single one of us in this room has an experience that is important that somebody else can learn from. And always be confident in that. Learn to laugh at yourself. There's going to be times in life where you have no frickin' idea why it happened. And sometimes you just got to throw up your hands and laugh about it because you can't logically justify what happened to you. Be honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, who are you going to be honest with? You're not going to be honest with your family, your friends, your customers, or anything else. Allow yourself to do nothing. When the going gets tough, step back. Don't work for a week. Put yourself first. Always ask yourself, will this matter a year from now? When you get into an argument with your spouse or your loved one, ask them, is this going to matter a year from now? Odds are it won't. Psychology has shown that if there needs to be a 1-to-5 ratio, if there's not a 1-to-5 ratio between happiness and argument in a couple, they will break up. Communication is key. The best way to do that is to put it in a framework of understanding whether it matters or not. Be patient with yourself and your vision. It's going to take time. be present, and always give glory to others. So here's the steps that we went through today, folks. You got 6 steps. When you abstract it out, this is what it looks like. My point being, most of this world is fearful, angry, full of hatred, and unhappy. And the reason why is because they're too afraid to sit in a room like you, and they're too afraid to manifest their dream. Understand the fact that fear grows out of ego. Understand the fact that for you to change the world and do what you want to do, you have to have the trust and the courage to do it. And understand finally that most of this world is based on smallness and in pointing to you at what you do wrong instead of what you're doing right. You've done the right things by being here today. And if it's one thing you remember out of this presentation, it's that luck is an accumulation of superior effort and focused execution. Thank you.